All right, so everybody, welcome to our first Lunch and Learn of 2021. So this is our January Lunch and Learn presentation, and we are focusing on planning and preparing for Permanency Planning Committee meetings. So I'm really excited because I get to be joined by Jacqui Kemp, a CASA coordinator in Kent County, and Emella Kamara from Newcastle as well. So I've got those two ladies who are going to present with me, and I'm going to get our little slideshow. All right, so our training objectives, we want to make sure that we explain the Permanency Planning Committee, often known as the PPC. So this, we want to identify what it is, who attends, and what to expect. We also want to identify potential permanency plans that are being presented. And remember, your job as CASA, kind of all of our jobs, is to focus on permanency. We don't want kids staying in foster care for years and years and years. So this is the sort of urgency for permanency. We start with a variety of different, we start with a main option, and then we can explore other options. So today we'll explore those options for permanency. We will also use learned skills to advocate for your client at PPC meetings, and then understand the specific roles of the triad members. So that would be your CASA coordinator, the CASA volunteer, and the child attorney.
Okay, I'm crazy.
So let's make sure to mute. Okay, so here we go. So what are the 4 W's and 1 H of a PPC? So we want to identify what is it, where, who, and what happens? What's the purpose of this meeting? So it is an internal DFS administrative review. Very important to know that this is a meeting, not a hearing. It's not a courtroom. It's not connected to the courtroom proceeding. It is indirectly, but it's not in front of the judge or anything like that. So in terms of where is it held, they are held at different well, right now they're all held via Zoom, of course. But in general, they are held at DFS offices in each county. And who attends them would be your DFS administrators. So these are the regional administrator, the foster care coordinator, the youth rehabilitative supervisor, perhaps a prevention of behavioral health supervisor. All these acronyms are sister agencies to the Division of Family Services. So YRS, Youth Rehabilitative Services, those are the juvenile justice folks. And then we have our prevention of behavioral health, which are our child mental health folks. The CASA, and then there is a referral made by the DFS worker. And the purpose of this PPC meeting is to review permanency. So a DFS worker can make a referral at about the 9-month mark of when a child has been in DFS custody. So you can see when that happens, you can kind of keep your calendar going, kind of maybe at least know the month of when that 9-month mark is. And your DFS social worker, usually the treatment worker, will make a referral to have a permanency planning committee meeting. This is usually when we are examining whether reunification might not be in the best interest any longer, or we need to looking at an alternative plan. And some of those plans, and we'll go into those in just a little bit more detail shortly, but would be guardianship, permanent guardianship, adoption, or APLA. So the DFS worker presents the case to the Permanency Planning Committee meeting. The committee, and which are made up of the folks we just discussed. So how does the DFS worker present these? Usually there's a form that they fill out, and then they present it to the different committee members. Hopefully a CASA gets a copy of this. If not, your CASA coordinator will be able to gather that document. But it's basically the summary of where has the case gone and where does the DFS worker propose that it goes. Are we continuing to seek reunification, or are we looking at something else? So the child attorney and/or the CASA will provide an opinion. So remember, at the end of the day, your role as a CASA is still to have an opinion about permanency and in the best interest of the child in DFS custody. So while everything is provided on Zoom at the moment, your role is to speak up. So way back when in 2019, I guess, when when PPC meetings were held in person, the child attorney and or the CASA would attend in person. They would attend the meeting and say their piece, what's their opinion about permanency and any other concerns they might have related to that case. While these meetings are now being done on Zoom, that is still very much the case where the CASA speaks up, provides their input, and CASAs are also really, really good at providing missing details, kind of filling in the gaps. The CASA case, the caseworker, may have, done a highlighted kind of the case, but maybe the CASA feels there's a bit of information that's really important to pass on as well. So the CASA can provide that additional information. Same with the child attorney. So while these are all happening, while this meeting is happening, whoever's running the meeting, which is generally the permanency coordinator, the permanency supervisor of that county, may turn to the CASA or the child attorney and say, and what else would you like to include? What opinion do you have? At the end of the meeting, everybody votes. And I'll ask Emella and Jacqui to share when they cover their slides, kind of what does it look like now that it's on Zoom. But they ask you for your opinion about permanency. Do you support reunification, or do you support something else such as guardianship, permanent guardianship, APLA, or adoption? And if so, why? And then what they will do is they will ask you to leave the room. They then vote and then share with you the outcome. I believe what happens, and I'll ask Emella and Jacqui in just a moment, but what happens on Zoom is they ask you to leave the Zoom meeting, and then follow-up happens from there. So Jacqui, I'll turn to you real quick, put you on the spot. What in Kent County, how are you handling the voting piece now that it's on Zoom?
They ask us to leave, and then the DFS worker will contact us. And if they don't contact us, in a timely fashion, then I contact them to let them know, to find out from them what the committee decided. So that's typically what I do.
Okay, excellent. And Jacqui, real quick, remind me, when are PPC meetings generally scheduled in Kent County?
You would ask that. I think I don't know the answer to that. Sorry.
I didn't know if it was like a regular.
It is a regular day, and so, but to kind of add to my confusion, I also have cases in Sussex County, so I sit in on both Kent and Sussex County PPCs. So I don't have it squared away.
Yeah, that's fine. So for Sussex then, has Sussex been following the same procedure about asking you to leave the Zoom meeting and then following up as well?
Yes, exactly. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, excellent. And in Sussex, I believe the PPC meetings.
If you would, then during non-COVID time, when we would be there on our own, in person, we would just go to a room outside of the meeting room, and someone would report to us once they had made the decision. I usually hung around to hear the decision instead of waiting to get an email from someone.
Sure, okay, that makes sense. And then in Sussex, I believe the PPC meetings are still scheduled generally the first Wednesday of every month.
Yes, and then if you're saying that, then the Kent ones are on Monday.
Mondays, yeah, okay. I want to say it's the fourth Monday for some reason. That's sticking in my head.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Jacqui. Emella, how about Newcastle? How does Newcastle handle the voting piece?
The same thing. They ask us to generally get off the line or the Zoom, and the DFS workers was a contact either the attorney, the child attorney, or myself with the results. If not, we reach out and try to get that information.
Okay, perfect. And same kind of offhand question to you about Newcastle PPCs. When are they generally held?
The 2021 schedule looks like it's the second and last Thursday of every month.
Second and last. Okay, gotcha. Perfect. Thank you. All right, so reviewing the different permanency plans. So our potential permanency plans considerations. So these are all options that we can consider, excuse me. So continued reunification is usually always the first one. And we do this because when kids come into care, more often than not, this is what we are looking for. We're working on reunification and we want to keep families together as much as possible. But sometimes that becomes not a possibility. So we start to look at other options. So guardianship, whether or not an actual guardian has been identified or not, we can seek to change the plan to guardianship. So this is either a relative or non-relative for just guardianship. Third can be permanent guardianship. So this is either a current guardian or a family member, or if the child is over 12, then it can be a non-family member. So we look at permanent guardianship, and these are all levels of permanency. And because today's focus is really on PPC meetings, I won't go into permanency options because we have a whole separate training on that, which is also located on our YouTube channel. So if you're interested in permanency options, we have another training for that. So permanent guardianship we can look at, as well as termination of parental rights for purposes of adoption. So this is how kids in Delaware in foster care become adopted. We seek the termination of parental rights first and then adoption. And then we have APLA, another planned permanent living arrangement. So this is the long acronym for long-term foster care. So I want to note, that children under the age of 16 cannot have APLA as a plan. So the federal government, I think it was in 2014, gave us till 2015 to implement changing all of our permanency plans that were APLA for kids under 16 to something else. So this really forced the child welfare system to be more creative and to really look deeper into different resources for kids. So then we can also have what's called concurrent planning, which is where we have 2 or more plans being considered at the same time. So for example, reunification, and we've hit the 9-month mark, and they're making some progress, but not as much as we would like to see. We might be able to consider changing the plan to a concurrent plan, which means that we keep reunification as a plan, but then we also seek another permanency outcome. So perhaps we could have reunification and guardianship, concurrent plans together, which basically means we are working on reunification, but if that event does not happen, we are ready with this other plan. Or it can be reunification and permanent guardianship, or reunification and termination of parental rights, or permanent guardianship and termination of parental rights. Or it could be all of the above. I think all of us have had some case that included families that had all of these options. But what it does is it allows the system to try to seek as the best viable permanency option while not yet stopping the efforts on one or more of those other permanency plans. So it is possible to have more than one plan. But these permanency plans are being considered during a PPC review. All right, so other PPC review meetings we have are also adoption selections. So this is the Permanency Committee approves adoptive or permanent guardianship resources. So if any CASA has been through this process, they will know a worker for the family presents the home study. It's roughly a 20-page document.
Lauren, you're breaking up.
Oh, sorry. Yikes, sorry. Okay, not quite sure why. How about now?
Start at the back of at the beginning of the slide.
Okay. So the PPC review hearings, can you hear me a little better now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So PPCs can be held to review adoption selections. So this is where an adoptive or permanent guardianship family has come forward. There might be more than one for a particular child, and the DFS worker presents the home study. So this is about a 20-page or so, maybe sometimes a little bit more document that really describes the adoptive family or the permanent guardianship. So this is their living arrangements, the health of all the family members, their ties to the community, and what those home studies look like. So the worker presents all this information to the Permanency Planning Committee meeting. So maybe one family presented at a time or more than one. So CASA can be part of the process in choosing an adoptive family for a child if there's more than one that has been been presented to the Permanency Planning Committee. So the PPC, the Permanency Planning Committee, will vote on the best resource for the child. So the members that we explained earlier, the different administrators through DFS, as well as the worker and the CASA, will review these home studies. A CASA may meet with potential adoptive families or potential permanent guardians and interview them and have an opinion on who they feel is in the child's best to be placed with for the child's best interest, who is the best resource for this particular child or sibling group. So the PPC votes just as they would if they were changing the plan, but now the vote is on which adoptive or permanent guardianship resource is best for this child. So the CASA, again, is asked their opinion and is able to decide. There is an appeal process that can happen. So we kind of have to let that play out through the court system, but this is another purpose of the Permanency Planning Committee. If it's not to change the plan, it is then to do either a resource review, so we're reviewing those resources, and hopefully at some point make an adoption selection where we decide on the best resource for the child. Any question? I'll pause for a second here. Any questions from the CASAs attending? Any questions on the PPC so far? And if so, feel free to unmute yourself. If not, we'll move right along. All right, so I'll turn it over to Jacqui to chat about the role of the CASA coordinator.
Okay, so as your coordinator, the plan is to be keeping an eye on which cases are ripe for PPC. Okay, as Lauren had said at the beginning, that typically rolls around the 9-month mark, somewhere around. You want to start thinking about the PPC around the time of the 3rd review hearing. Excuse me, I have a phone ringing in the background. Hopefully it'll stop in a minute. So start around the 3rd review hearing. You might get something from me saying, hey, we're probably going to be going to PPC soon. But then what happens is I will get an email from the county coordinator for permanency supervisor that will say, your case is due, it's scheduled for on a certain date. And they'll tell me who the worker is and what goal change they are going for. We always we get these emails maybe a week ahead of time. Sometimes we get shorter notice than that. But as soon as I get it, I have to make sure that you, the CASA, know about it and that the attorney is aware. So I notify them through an email or a phone call to let them know that the meeting date and what the goal change is and the things that we need to be thinking about. So then I'll set up a telephone conference between the CASA and the attorney to get prepared for the PPC meeting. And it's really, really important that, it'd be important to have the phone call. Sometimes there's not enough notice to get that phone call in, but we do have to at least have some back and forth with the attorney and the CASA to make sure that everybody's on the same page. We do not want to go into a PPC meeting without agreeing on matters. And there could, a lot of times it's obvious that the reunification isn't working because a parent hasn't done anything on their case plan and it's time to come up with our other alternatives to reunification. Perhaps there is a family member or a foster parent or something that wants to, become a permanent guardian. If the child is a baby, we would actually then be pushing for termination of parental rights and adoption if it's a baby, and as opposed to a permanent guardianship. But maybe somebody for some reason thinks a permanent guardianship is the better answer. So you really don't want to come into a PPC meeting and they go around the table and they're asking everybody, what's your position? And the attorneys state one position and the CASA state another position. So that phone call, or, you know, some type of meeting prior to the PPC is paramount to you know, nailing down where we are in the before we go into the meeting. The other thing is with the adoption selection, I have only had one case where we had more than one family looking at the children. And in those types of cases, it's really important that you have read the study so that you know how you're going to weigh them. We also, one of the things that was good about the one adoption selection where we had more than one family, the DFS worker, the permanency worker, set up Zoom meetings so that the CASA and the attorney could, you know, meet both families through Zoom, which was really nice because one family was in Wilmington and the other family was in, I believe, Ocean View, or, you know, down way in the southern part of the state. And it's actually a Kent County case, so we had people all over the place. But that was really good. It was very good, helpful to have the adoption select the family studies prior to the meeting with the families, and so we were able to ask good questions and, you know, and really get a better feel for the families in those cases. So so it's my job to, you know, if the DFS worker doesn't send me the home studies, to get them from them prior to the selection hearings, and make sure that the CASA has them so that they can, you know, have that additional information. So that's kind of what I would say about my role in preparing the volunteers for the committee hearings.
Wonderful. All right, Emella, I'll turn it over to you. Can you chat about the role of the CASA volunteer?
Okay, I couldn't for some reason unmute myself. Could you go to the next slide, please?
Yep, do you see the role of the CASA on here?
No, mine froze. Oh goodness.
How about now?
No, I don't see it on there. What I will do is go to, oh goodness.
Do you want me to chat about, do the role of the CASA?
I can do, I just can't see the slide. So I think I can do it without it. I don't know how to exit. I'm so sorry. I don't know how to exit the full screen.
So put your cursor up to the very top of your screen and you should see something that says like exit full screen.
Okay.
Try that.
Oh, okay. I think I got out, but now I can't see the PowerPoint at all. Can you just read what the slide says and I'll talk about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So CASA's meeting with the clients to determine their wishes.
Okay, so when you get the PPC notice from your coordinator, you want to meet with your client. Hopefully this takes place before the conference that Jackie just talked about with the triad with the child attorney and the coordinator should take place technically before you really talk with the child. And again, age is going to be, you know, the mitigating factor, and now I can see it in how you approach the PPC goals with your child, but you want to kind of gauge with the child what their thoughts are. You want to get their input. If they're, you know, 12, I generally say 12 and older, again, age, mental health factors, all that's going to play a place into how you hold the conversation. If you hold the conversation, you may not be the appropriate person to have the conversation with the youth and say, you know, this is what's going on with the case. This is what the team is looking at. What do you think? You are going to want to gauge whether, you know, it is your role and your place should be having that conversation. But if you do determine that you want to get the input from the child, you know, see what the head is thinking. If you have a youth that thinks they're absolutely going home, but you know, as the CASA, we're absolutely not leaning towards that, you know, try to gauge if somebody needs to talk to that child about what the possible outcomes are going to be. That's again going to go with, you know, you want to discuss the possible outcomes of what the case is going to be, or what the PPC meeting is going to be, if appropriate. Again, you may not be the right person for that role, but gauge and then come back with the coordinator and let her know, hey, I think somebody needs to talk to this youth about what the outcome of this case is going to be. Because it's attendance. This is something that you should be discussing with your coordinator and your child attorney in that pre-PPC conference, I'll call it. Somebody needs to be in attendance for that hearing. Ideally, again, pre-COVID, these PPC meetings will be in person. So if when you get the notification from your coordinator and you know absolutely you cannot attend that meeting, let your coordinator know automatically that you cannot attend that meeting, so they can start taking steps to find out can you be on the phone. If you can't be on the phone, can you email the DFS worker what the decision is? And that again will determine if the coordinator can't be on that meeting or the attorney can't be on that meeting. But absolutely somebody from the team needs to be on that meeting to let the team know, the PPC meeting know, hey, and we're here to represent that. So when you do attend the meeting, share information. Don't just attend the meeting. We want you guys to be recognized that you are doing a lot of the work. So if everything that has been said about that child has been, you know, negative, say one thing positive, say two things positive.
Emella, you're cutting out a little bit. Is there any way you can maybe try to adjust your computer or anything a little bit? You're just kind of cutting out a bit.
Hold on. Let me see if I can.
Okay, I think we can hear you a little better.
Is that better? I kind of think I hit the resolution. Is that better?
Yep, much, much better. Thank you.
Sorry, guys. My computer sucks. So be positive. If everything has been said has been negative, try to be positive. Try to be the positive voice. State your opinion. State your position. So I tell CASAs it's absolutely okay. And, you know, as we go into the PPC, for the most part, we know what we want to come out of that PPC. We as a team, not just as a triad team, but as, you know, with DFS, we've been talking, we all know where the case is going. So if you are, you know, opposed to what the DFS worker is presenting, and we as a team have discussed that and we've come up with our decision, state your opinion, state why you state your position, state why, not your opinion. I should not say opinion, state your position, why you feel that way. If you agree with DFS, state why. Don't just say, yes, we, the CASA team, we agree with DFS. You want to absolutely state why you agree with DFS, or why you don't disagree, why you disagree with DFS. And then the last point I always put in there is ask for concurrent planning. Don't just, you know, limit to one option, one permanency option. Like Lauren said, we can absolutely do concurrent planning. So that brought to the PPC's attention. Put that out there and see what we can get. That's all I had. Jackie, if you want to jump in. Sorry about my computer, guys.
You're doing great. Jackie, do you have anything else to add about the role of the CASA volunteer?
No, it really just to reemphasize what Emella said, in that when you go in there, you know, add your information, make the committee really feel that, you know, that you're involved in the case, and that the committee members, it's interesting, you'll notice that they they come from different perspectives, and they're going to ask questions that you haven't heard other people ask. And so just really know your case and know the personal stuff so that you can give them, you know, good information, because they're making, you know, in some respects, some really, really important decisions. So the more information they have, the better their decision is going to be. And I'm sorry, you know, for those of you who haven't actually been at a PPC in person, it can be a very dynamic experience. It's not that dynamic on Zoom, but hopefully we'll get back to the point where it is in person. So look forward to that.
Awesome. Thank you, Jackie and Emella. All right, so the role of the child attorney. So their number one responsibility is to provide legal advice and support. So not much different than their actions during the triad. So they must attend or work with the CASA to determine who's going to attend. There's certain cases where it's not necessary to have both the child attorney and the CASA in attendance. Sometimes it is. Usually if it's a situation that requires some discussion, or perhaps we have opposing views from the Division of Family Services, or maybe there's just some extenuating circumstances. So the child attorney would also state their position. And as Jackie and Emella discussed, hopefully we've already had a teleconference with the CASA coordinator, the CASA volunteer, and the child attorney. So we are on the same team. We're on the same page. We have the same opinion about the position. And I love that Emella said, you know, state your opinion. Oh, wait, no, your position, because I find myself saying opinion all the time, and I'm trying to get better at saying position, because it's not, opinion isn't really the right word, but legally your position is really what we're asking for, and what the Permanency Planning Committee members are asking for. What is your position and what is your recommendation? So the child attorney will file a response motion. So what happens is when the Division of Family Services either agrees to change the plan, even if it's to concurrent planning, so they kept the original plan, but maybe they've added another permanency option, or they've done an adoption selection, or they changed a plan completely, maybe from reunification to termination of parental rights for purposes of adoption, the child attorney must file a response motion. So the Division of Family Services Deputy Attorney General will file the motion to change the plan or whatever it is that they have agreed to do. And then the parent attorneys will file a motion, but so will the child attorney. So that response can be in support or in opposition to what the Division of Family Services has filed. So once the child attorney files that response motion, it goes before the family court judge, the same judge that has your case, and now it's kind of on the legal end. So the child attorney is, at the end of the day, the one that provides the legal guidance and the support in filing that response motion. Emella and Jackie, did I forget anything about child attorneys?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Well, I'll just say one thing, if you go back. Like, as we said, we're going into this, hopefully all on the same page. And even though, we are going to be on the same page, even though the attorney may state their position, don't forget the CASA states their position, even though it's the same as the attorneys. You really want to be a voice in that room. Even though the attorney's saying the same thing, have your voice heard.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a good point, Jackie. Don't be afraid to speak up. And this is not kind of going back a little bit to what Jackie said earlier about sharing as much information as you have about the case. Like, this is not the time to be humble. Like, this is where you might be able to share all the information that you have, especially because CASAs are so good at knowing little pieces of information that may not be little, they may actually be really big. So that by stating your position in conjunction with the child attorney is very helpful as well.
Okay.
All right, Jackie, I'll turn it to you to advocacy prep. How do you prepare?
Well, like we say, you have that need. You want to make sure that that your notes are up to date, that you've gotten the client position I think that that's really important, that to get, to make sure that their wishes, especially, and as Emella said, it's dependent on the child's age, or but that's important. Just being, I don't know, I don't want to, I don't want to understate the importance of, talking together, sharing your thoughts and your concerns, because sometimes you will come into these things with the attorney and the CASA and the coordinator having different ideas about it. I'm trying to think of like an example without getting too specific. Well, I mean, you could be, like I said before, why would you, if you had a baby, why would it be better for it to be a permanent guardianship as opposed to an adoption? And actually, I did have one of those the other day, and I was totally expecting someone from the committee to ask, why aren't we going for an adoption for a 1-year-old? And nobody did. And I think that that was strictly under the, because we were in Zoom. I really do think it was. But through the history of the case, a grandmother had stepped forward, and she wanted to do permanent guardianship.
And you're right, Jacqui, sometimes permanent guardianship is better in certain situations, but that's where this committee kind of helps flush that out of what is the best permanency option.
Exactly. And we had discussed, the possibility of, somebody asking on the committee, asking that question. And so we had an answer for them, in regards to that. So, and again, if you and the attorney are at odds with each other on, what goal you would like to see set at the end of the PPC, don't be afraid to share your thoughts and your concerns with the attorney. There is a mechanism that we have with the CASA program to work those differences out. So, there's just certain things that you're going to know about the case. I mean, the attorney is going to know the legal stuff, but there is a reason why we still have CASAs. And that's because they get into the weeds, they get into the social situations, the family dynamics, the child's, personal situation. They know the children better than the attorneys. They can also know the family situations better. But never think that what your concerns are, that your concerns aren't as equally valid as the attorneys. That's one thing that I really want you to work, all the time, that you're a CASA. Don't think that you are, that your thoughts and concerns aren't equal with the attorneys.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jacqui. I'm going to pause for a quick second. So Lauren Allgood, I'm going to turn to you. You had something you wanted to share kind of about our last slide, actually, about the role of the child attorney and the CASA, I think, a CASA coordinator. Lauren, what would you like to share?
Yeah, I just want to share, I had a case, and it's something that kind of slipped through the cracks, and I really wasn't aware of it before, but it's good to check to see if there's anybody else who has adopted siblings of a child that you're looking for possible adoption. There was a case, actually it was DFS did catch it, but and it turned out to be a very wonderful situation because they had 2 of the other children. So now this baby was in a family with 2 other siblings. So it's just something now I have on my checklist to check and asked that question of anybody, is there anybody else? And it was in a different county. So that's probably why at first it wasn't caught, but it turned out great. So just wanted to add that.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. So that's a good kind of tip and trick is, you know, if adoption is looking possible, then to do some research to see if there's any other previous adoption of siblings. Good, Lauren, thank you. We also have another question to explain the difference between permanent guardianship and guardianship. And without going into a long training based on those two, guardianship is generally temporary, meaning that it is not the parents still have parental rights. They are still able to file things in court, and they are able to file to rescind custody. So they are able to petition the court to have custody of their children back. And think once Division of Family Services no longer holds custody of children, once we are removed and then CASA is removed as well, now you have guardian versus parent, which might be a challenge depending on what that relationship looks like. But guardianship is meant to be temporary. It is not, not meant to last for long. And there are certain benefits that come with permanent guardianship. So with guardianship, it's any, an adult can take guardianship of any child as long as they are, there's some connection to them basically. With permanent guardianship, you have grounds to terminate parental rights, but you're choosing not to for some reason. So an example where you would do permanent guardianship instead of adoption is perhaps the family connection. Maybe there's some relationship there that you don't want to sever. So with permanent guardianship, basically means that we can terminate parental rights, but we're choosing not to. With permanent guardianship, there also comes some financial support. So much like an adoption case, the family is able to gain financial support as well. Also, they are eligible for adoption services. So there's some support groups and some bi-weekly meetups, and there's some supports through permanent guardianship. Big benefit to permanent guardianship is that the biological parents cannot file anything in court to rescind custody. So once the child welfare system exits the picture and you have a guardian or a permanent guardian versus a parent, that parent cannot come back in court tomorrow to file for their child back. So it provides a little buffer between the guardian and the parent. So I hope that's helpful. Again, we have a whole long, I think it's like an hour and a half long training or an hour or so training on permanency. So hopefully that helps. All right. Emella, you're purple. Go ahead, Emella. Who's purple?
You're purple.
I'm purple. Oh gosh, I'm purple. Sorry about that. So in preparing for advocacy, that teleconference is really, really important. So the teleconference you would have with your child attorney, with the triad, the child attorney, the CASA volunteer, and the CASA coordinator. Super helpful. This also is helpful for identifying the adoption. So as Jacqui said, she's only had it one other time where you've had more than one family. I think I only had it maybe once that I can think of where we had more than one family. So I know it's possible. It's just not it's a little bit rare to have more than one family. But either way, you want to have that teleconference with your triad to prepare for this PPC meeting. You're going to discuss the potential outcomes with the triad, and then absolutely make sure to speak to the client to determine their wishes. Again, like Emella said, this is age appropriate and kind of age and stage, kind of where are they? You may not ask an infant about their wishes, but you certainly could ask an 11, 12, 13-year-old, or older what their wishes are and what they would like to see happen, because it's really, really important. So CASA can introduce past history of one parent has already, given up custody. So DFS would know if there was a prior termination of parental rights. So there's a question about, can we share that information? That information, more often than not, I can't think of a way that it wouldn't come from DFS. DFS would know that if there was any prior history. And the PPC committee, they would know the grounds for why the child came into DFS custody. So if it's a housing issue, employment, substance, something like that. Hope that answered. All right, Emella, I'll turn it over up to you to follow up. What happens after a PPC?
Okay, so you've gone to this meeting, you've said, state your opinion, do this, do that. So then what happens afterwards? Speak to your client about the decision as appropriate. Again, we're gonna really harp on this ages thing because you wanna always keep in mind the age of the child.
Emella, you're breaking up a bit more. Sorry, I don't know if you whatever you did last time worked well.
Okay, let's try this again. Can you hear me?
Much better.
That's better. So speak with your child about the decision. Again, this is going to be determined by you and your team. If you are the right and appropriate person to do this, if it's a termination of a parental right, and this child is adequately set on going home, maybe the team is going to decide that's a mental health specialist area that they're going to decide. They're going to
All right, move your.
Jesus, this is serious. I'm so sorry, guys. Is that better?
Much better.
Okay, so we're gonna use our judgment. We're all gonna use sound judgment on how this news is given to the child, if it's given to the child. We may not be the one that give this news to the child. Share your position with the child attorney. So if you go into this meeting and we have our position, and yet and still the outcome of the meeting is not what we advocated for, we're gonna, talk to the team, talk to the child coordinator, the CASA coordinator and the child attorney, and let them know what your position is. Are you okay with the decision? Do you think that something needs to be done about the decision? If we as a team come up with the finding that we're absolutely opposed to this position, for example, if we get APLA for a teen that is in a home where we absolutely could have gotten guardianship for, we can have the attorney file a motion or file a response. Again, this will be determined by what the outcome of the PPC meeting was. So if we are in disagreement with the PPC committee's decision, we are going to discuss the next steps. Is going to be done by the attorney after our decision as a triad. It is going to be done by the attorney. The attorney will file a motion, stating if we disagree with the decision and so on.
All right, we like
when they say, when they come back and they say, I disagree, I always ask, did you speak up at the PPC? Because you disagree with something that you did not advocate for. So keep that in mind.
excellent.
Jesus.
I know, technology, you're all good. Okay, so for the attorney piece, we still want to always speak to the client about the decision, just as Emella said, and the child attorney will answer the DFS motion. So this is the permanency plan change. So regardless, even if we agree, we meaning the CASA volunteer and the child attorney agree with the plan change, we still file the child attorney still files a motion to that the response motion to what Division of Family Services filed. So there is a response even if we agree. If there's a disagreement with PPC, we can file a motion to change the permanency plan, and we then go hash it out in court. So say DFS wants to change the plan, but we don't, or vice versa. That's when we have a specific hearing in front of a judge to change the plan or not. Because at the end of the day, it's the judge that will agree or disagree to the permanency plan change. Jacqui or Emella, anything else to add about this piece? All right, so what questions do we have about PPC? So kind of the big things to remember is that PPC happens roughly the 9-month mark after a child has come into DFS custody. It is organized by the permanency supervisor in each of those counties. Right now it's held on Zoom, otherwise it's held in person either once or twice a month in each county. The DFS treatment worker will present this case and what their plans are, what they would like to do to change the permanency plan or for an adoption resource. The CASA attends and states their position. So any questions about permanency planning committee meetings? All right. You all look beautiful and quiet. I like I hope we answered your questions. Jacqui and Emella, thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, sorry about the technology. I hope that was clear, that you guys got the understanding.
It's all good. It's all good. Technology works until it doesn't.
Yeah,
Cool.
and just remember, like with the PPC, even though you're looking for it around the 9-month mark, sometimes it will show up at odd times depending on the case. Like I had one, it was at the very beginning of the case because the parents weren't case planning. So they went to permanency immediately. So just be prepared. As you know, with all your CASA work, every family is different. Every case is different. So just when you get that phone call from your coordinator, be ready to participate.
Excellent, Jacqui. That's a really good point. Yeah, it's not always the 9-month mark, and I should have said that earlier too. It's not always. So definitely a good point. So if you haven't been to a PPC meeting yet, you might shortly, and at the end of the day, have a position, and then speak to that position. So we always, just as any recommendation we always make, we want to support it with evidence and facts. So if you have an opinion, to state a position on a particular resource or a change in permanency plan, stick with it and then just try to find as much support, evidence and information as you possibly can.